we're going to be looking at the different question types, because ultimately this is with student learning, they will learn better with a variety of question types. Most of us just use a lot of multiple choice because it's the easiest, but ultimately, as far as student learning is concerned, having a variety is better for them. So we're just going to look at the different types. And if you see any that you're like, oh, that's really interesting, I think I could use that, we're going to move to more of a kind of question and answer thing at the end, where hopefully you guys will go, hey, how do you do that particular question type, or ask any questions you have about the different question types. So we're going to start with my little quiz here, and we're going to start a new preview. All right, so they're not actually 31 question types. There's only about 23, I believe. We just have multiple examples of some. I've tried to include examples from all different fields. You'll notice a lot of them are English questions because that's what I'm most familiar with, and it's easiest for me to create questions in that category. But I tried to kind of create some in different areas so that you might kind of see how you could use these in your classes. So first up is multiple choice. This is the one we're most familiar with. But you do have multiple options with multiple choice, and that's one answer only and multiple answers allowed. And so one answer only is the one that we're all familiar with, and you just pick one, and that's your choice. Multiple choice, multiple answers allowed has you choose all of the correct parts. So I do not know the answer to this, just to throw that out there. So I'm just clicking on random ones, but you have to choose all of them that are correct to get the correct number of points. Now, there are two different ways to set this one up. One of the ways they don't lose any points if they choose a wrong one. Like, I'm pretty sure humorous is not a part of the wrist, it's part of the arm. And so if they choose that, they're not going to lose any points for that. But there's also a way to make it where it will take a portion of the points away if they choose an incorrect one. Because if you have it set where it's not going to hurt them to choose the wrong ones, they could literally just choose all of them and get 100 every time. Now, you know, whether or not they figure that out, who knows, but it's probably safer to just go ahead and set it up where they're all worth a certain percentage. And so I'll just go ahead and look at that really quick. To do that, on the choices that are correct, I have it work 12.5% because there are 8 bones. And so 100 divided by 8, each one is worth 12.5%. So all the correct ones are worth a positive 12.5. And then the incorrect ones here at the bottom are worth a negative 12.5. And so the whole thing is worth 1 point, or however many points you want, really. But each correct answer is worth an eighth of the total, and each correct answer will take away an eighth of the total. So that is an option for multiple choice. Oh, and another thing on that, to set it up that way with the regular multiple choice question, all you do is click multiple answers allowed. That's it. So one answer only, you can only choose one, and then multiple answers allowed lets you choose all of those. So that's pretty easy. True, false, we're all pretty familiar with. Honey is the only food that doesn't ever or almost ever spoil. I don't know when or how I came up with some of these questions. Matching, we're all pretty familiar with. You can do just standard match this with this, and it's a drop down. Impulsive, unpredictable. I'm not even going to read these. I'm just going to choose. And they can actually choose the same one on all of them, which you may or may not want because they're guaranteed a third of the answer, but that is just some part of matching. But you can also add distractors. So this is a matching question. There's only 4 flags here, but there's 6 options. And so for this one, they could potentially choose the wrong one for all of them if, I don't think chat is one of the ones I did, but I don't really remember. I also wanted to show you that you can do this with pictures. So that's kind of a cool option that you may not have thought of before. If you do pictures, you want to be careful and make sure you have alt text included. So alternative text just basically reads them what the picture looks like if they are visually impaired, or if the screen they're using is not showing them the picture correctly for some reason. And so to see that alt text, they have to go either be using software for that or go to inspect, and it's going to tell them the alt text, horizontal stripes with yellow on top, blue in the middle, and red on the bottom. The top stripe is thicker than the others. You also have to be careful though, because you may not have known this. If you use images, when you upload an image in Moodle, it asks you to name that image. So I'm sorry to, my geography people, but I have no idea which flag this is. But if you have named that image after that country, it's going to tell them the name of that image. And so they can, if they're smart, get in there and see that the name of that image, and that can give away what the answer is. So you do have to be aware of that if you're using images. But that's not necessarily something that's going to come up very often. So just thought I'd throw it out there. That's something neat that you can do. Short answer versus essay, I thought would be good to cover because I've seen a couple people do this incorrectly. Short answer, there has to be a single correct answer, and they have to type it in exactly the way that you type it in. Otherwise, they're going to miss it. If they misspell it, they're going to miss it. So for the answer for this one is mouse. The word muscle comes from a Latin term meaning little mouse. If they type mice, they're going to miss it. If they misspell mouse, they're going to miss it. If you don't want them to automatically miss things for small mistakes like that, then you probably want to use essay, because essay can be any answer. So if they may word it differently than you would have worded it, that sort of thing, you probably want to use essay, and you'll go in and manually grade those. Now you can go in and manually grade short answer, but the main difference is short answer is going to automatically count it wrong and show them the score with that answer incorrect. So let's say it's all short answer and they make a mistake on all of them, but not a mistake that's big enough to actually miss the point, but just a mistake. Maybe they, they got mouse, but they put the period at the end. So that's correct, but it's going to show them they got a 0. Whereas on this one, if they answer it incorrectly, it's not going to show them anything until you go in and grade it. So that's the big difference with short answer and essay. You can go in and manually fix those and give them the points for those, but it's going to show them the 0 until you do that. Numerical is very similar to short answer, except you can only type in numbers. Like it will let me type in letters right here, but when I go to submit the exam at the end, it's going to tell me that this question didn't populate correctly, and I will show you guys what that looks like. So essay, there's a couple of cool options with essay that you might not be familiar with. So this one, you can make your answer not required, or you can require them to answer it so they can't skip it. There's different lengths of text. So you can require 5 lines, 15 lines, 20, 30, and 40. That is not a maximum. It will still let you type more than 5 lines. It'll let you keep going until you're done. It's just that determines how big that box is. So 5 lines is going to show you the smallest box. And if you want them to know they're supposed to write a lot, then you probably want a bigger box like that. That's all that line thing does. You can also have them attach things on a quiz, which is pretty cool. It's a little different. But they can attach anything. They can drag and drop, or they can, attach whatever they want, right? And so this one is same thing, but it is an answer required, 15 lines of text. So you notice the box is bigger. No attachments allowed on this one. And it is going to make me answer it. So when I go to submit it, it won't submit without me answering this one. So I'm going to skip you to show what that looks like. Another thing you can do with essay is set up a response template. And so what that does is they're going to see this in their answer box. So for this example, I have identify the subject, verb, and direct object in the following sentence. Jack threw the ball. So this is something that you type up in the question. So in the question down here, I went to response template and put that in there, and then they're going to see that in their response. And so that's cool because it can kind of give them a guide on what exactly you're looking for. So if you're actually wanting them to write an essay, you might do something like introduction, body, conclusion, and that's going to show up there to remind them that they need to have all three of those parts or something like that. If you just want the answer structured in a specific way, you can kind of guide them with that. And so for this one, we're looking for the subject here, and my mouse is not cooperating. The verb here and the direct object here, right? Of course, they can erase all of that and just completely type their answer. And that's going to show up different when you go to grade it than everybody else's. So whatever. There's also an all or nothing multiple choice. So this is similar to the multiple choice that we looked at earlier, except earlier we looked at there were 8 possible options. Each one is worth 12.5%, which is an eighth. And then they lose an eighth of a point for each one they get wrong. And you can do that with 2 of them and have each one be half. You can do it with 3 and have each of them be a third, and so forth. I just did an eighth because that's how many bones are on the wrist according to Google. So all or nothing, if they don't get it right, they just get a 0. So have which of the following are included in a standard recipe for cake. So obviously they have to choose eggs, flour, and sugar. But if they miss one of them, then they miss the whole question. So that's the difference in the multiple choice, multiple answers allowed, and all or nothing multiple choice. Next up is math stuff. The calculated. So what's cool about this is I did not type 524 and 218. I typed original money and money gave. And so that's going to change every single time that question comes up. Every single student is going to get a different number right there. And so Moodle just auto creates that number. It is a little bit complicated to set up. As you can see, there were 3 pages of stuff there, and it's kind of a lot, but it's pretty cool that it will do that. So if we started a new preview of this quiz, it would show us different numbers there, right? And you do set parameters so that you can make sure that it's at least, $2 and $2 and a maximum, so that you don't have thousands and thousands of dollars coming up and having them doing something way more complicated. So that one wants you to actually do the math. He has 524. He gave 218 to his daughter, so it wants you to subtract. The thing with the calculated is that it can only do pretty basic equations, but it can do, I think, the 4 main: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So if that is something that you use in your classes. Calculated multi-choice, instead of looking for the actual answer, it's going to look for what math do you need to do to find the answer. It's looking for, do you recognize this as a subtraction, multiplication, division, that sort of thing. Simple calculated is almost the exact same as calculated. It's just a little bit simpler to use. There are fewer parameters to define. Again, they came up with these numbers. I just put in a variable and it populated it with numbers. It's just a little bit easier to set up, but it also can't do quite as much as calculated. Drag and drop into text is going to let you drag words into the text. So drag it up maybe. So this is very similar to multiple choice. You could use it in roughly the same way that you would use multiple choice, except they can't use an answer twice, because once it's there, right? So that's a little bit weird. And again, you could also use this in other subjects. Same thing. I just was trying to do something a little less English related. My math people, pretty sure that's right, but yeah. This one.
I have a question on that one.
Huh?
I have a question on that drag and drop.
Yeah, what do you got?
How are we supposed to make that like visually impaired friendly?
If they're using visually impaired friendly, if they're using a reader, it will read it correctly. It will say, oh, blank, can you see? And it will tell them what the options are.
But how do they drag and drop?
If they
How do they
have
answer it?
the appropriate software, they should be able to do it.
Okay.
But that, I mean, if they have the software that would read it to them, they should be able to do it. But ADA technically allows this type of question. So
Okay.
This one is it's a little sketchier as far as that's concerned, because describing each of these things is difficult, but it is possible to describe each of the zones. And so here we have a bunch of zones where you go in and do the different parts of the microscope. I don't know very many of these. I know that's the base. And I feel like that's an eyepiece. All right, but we're just gonna put the rest of those up there. And they don't have to be very precise. If you look at the actual question and the way that it's set up, it's a very big zone right there. So as long as they get it anywhere in that range, it's gonna count it as correct. And you can make that zone as big or as small as you like, depending on how precise the image is. Okay. So on these, you drag on drag and drop markers, you drag words onto a picture. On drag and drop images, just wanted to show you that you can do GIFs, which is pretty cool. You drag images onto images. And again, you have to add those descriptors to show them what they're dropping where.
Ashley.
Yeah.
You know, I use a lot of the drop and drags, either identify a bone or muscle, or like you have one on the microscope, I do that also. And then I have drop and drag text. But I'm noticing that I seem to be having a lot of students that'll have issues with this.
Okay.
But now I'll have one class that doesn't have any issues with the same assignment as another class.
One thing that I've found with drag and drop into text, it's the main one that I've used, is if you have something that can go in more than one spot. So one of the ways that I tried to use it was having them identify which sentence was a comma splice, which one was a fused sentence, which one was a fragment, and which one was correct. And so multiple sentences were comma splices, so they could drag and drop the comma splice into multiple spots. That does not work well. You should avoid those.
We did figure out that if you have like a touch screen, it does not work with touch screens.
It doesn't. They don't like the touch screens.
Yeah, and even the mouse on the computer itself, they seem to have trouble with. But with a regular hooked up mouse, they seem to do fine with. So I'm wondering, could that be just the issue?
It could be. But like I'm using a physical mouse here. And you probably noticed earlier when I was dragging this that it was being a little bit weird, like this. So what's happening right here is pointing to my screen and you can't really see it. It's identifying that say as it over the box. And right now it is clicked into place. but like it's actually down there. So it is a little bit wonky. So like right now it's not actually, right now it's in place and now it's not. And you can tell by the way it didn't click into the box.
Right. Okay.
And so it does do that sometimes. It's still going to count this as correct because it is identifying that as in that box, but it is a little bit weird. So you probably, the drag and drops are the big ones on that. And if they don't have the appropriate software, like Jennifer mentioned, they do potentially have ADA issues as well. And so these might be things that you would want to use for like low point quizzes and stuff that aren't going to be detrimental to them if they have technical issues. But that's just with the drag and drops. The other multi choices and stuff, I haven't seen any problems with those.
Okay, thank you.
And actually I haven't seen a problem with the drag and drop matching, but it could still have the issues. I don't know. I haven't used this one as much, but it's just, here's your list, here's the thing it matches. It's very, very much more straightforward than some of the other drag and drops, but I haven't tried it with a touch screen. I haven't actually used it very much. So the embedded or closed questions are really, really interesting. They're a lot more versatile than some of our question types. Like here, one of the neat things about this one is it's 3 different questions in one, right? And so they can do drop downs. They can do type, fill in the blank type questions, or you can do regular multiple choice questions, short answer questions, numerical questions. And actually this one is the list of all the different question types that you can do. So you can do multiple choice with drop down answers, which is what this one is. Multiple choice with drop down answers shuffled. So you can make it where those are always in the same order, or you can make it where they shuffle them every time. You can do multiple choice with answers in a horizontal row. I don't have an example of this, but it would just be all of your options and with radio buttons going across in a horizontal row. Horizontal row shuffled, vertical column, which is what this one is, vertical column shuffled. You can do it where it allows multiple answers in a horizontal row, also shuffled, multiple answers in a vertical column shuffled. This is actually what this one is because it's multiple answers. You can do short answer where case is not important. You can do short answer where they do have to capitalize everything you capitalize and lowercase everything you lowercase. You can do number only questions and you can include optional tolerance. So if they can get it, so if they're rounding, you can give them a little bit of leeway depending on what you want to do there. The only one you can't do is essay questions. So you can't do those with close. And so this is an example that I stole from Aja that shows a way that you might want to use these. Because a lot of times we'll have a question where we have the same instructions over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Like with, you know, some of my grammar tests, I might have something like identify which is the comma splice, or identify if it's a comma splice fused sentence, complete sentence, or fragment. And it would be the same thing over and over and over again. It'd have that and then the sentence and then the options, and it'd have that and then the sentence and then the options. And so this, you can put those instructions once and then put all of the questions so that you don't have to keep saying that instructional part over and over and over again. I also used it some in reading because it made it easy to put the passage there with the question. I've seen it done with videos there with the question. So those are good ways to use embedded or closed questions. If you're interested in those, Aja uses them a ton and knows a lot about them. Those are her favorite question type, I think. So she knows a lot about those. There's one called formulas where you can put in a formula. I just did the area of a square, and then it chooses different lengths and heights each time. So it's going to just randomly populate that with numbers. It is going to make sure that they work out to a nice number, I believe, and then you have to answer. Gap fill is very similar to drag and drop. I've got the distractors there, but it doesn't take that away when you put it in. But the cool thing about gap fill is this table. You can do a table where they have to choose, and it doesn't have to be in a certain order. So like you could put dog there and fox there, and it doesn't matter that those are in a different order. And you could even, if you put the same one in the column, it's going to identify that and not give them the points for that twice. It did not shuffle those very well this time. We have matrix options now where you can do those types of things all in one question. You can, I think, have it set where they can choose more than one, but I don't have it set that way. So if they click this one, it automatically unclicks that one. I know this is something they use in nursing. I just Googled how nursing uses K-prime, and this is an example question it came up with, so I don't even know the answers to these. So we're just gonna, so yeah, that is the matrix and K-prime question type. Ordering, you just put the things on there in order, and it's just a drag and drop type thing. Select missing words. Oh, I didn't mean to put the same one on all of them, but that is what it is. Word select. Now with this one, I showed you two different kinds here. So on this one, I asked them to choose the first sentence of a word that is a sentence fragment. And the way I set it up, these that are circled are the only words they can click. So like they can't click any of these words that aren't the first word of a sentence. So it kind of highlights those first words of the sentences, but it also keeps them from accidentally losing a ton of points by clicking the wrong things. So you can click those, or you can set it up where there are no circles and they literally click on each of the different things. Now, the biggest problem with this particular one is, okay, so each of these is right. Each of these is a significant digit, but these are not. And so since they are not, it doesn't recognize that they should be separated. And so if you click on them, it clicks on all of them. But unless they, choose the wrong one, they won't see that. But there are lots of different ways to use word select. And then this is a Weirus question type. So this is something used in science and math primarily. And it's another one of those where it's going to randomize numbers and choose those random numbers for you. And I fully do not understand how these work. I don't understand fully, like I fully do not understand. Like I don't understand even a little bit how these work. So if you have questions about these, you should ask Aja, or I've heard that Travis is really good at these as well. But it's a lot of programming to make these work. So I have not played with those and do not understand how they work. And then the last type is description, which is literally just kind of instructions. You can include them at any point in the quiz. They do not affect the score in any way. They just show up wherever you stick them. So one of the other things I wanted to look at with this was the different ways you can set up the quiz. Let me see, I'm going to move this over here. And, oh, I forgot I was going to show you something there, but let me see, to save our answers, I did. So if they typed letters into a number one, it's going to show them incomplete answer. the ones that we didn't do correctly or that I just altogether skipped, it's going to show them on that page. So that's the one that we looked at where it was a numerical question and I typed in a word. And so it tells them that this is not a valid number if they try and submit that on that finish attempt page. Now that does require them to actually go through here and look at these, but it does tell them that they didn't do that correctly. Okay, so another thing I wanted to look at was the different question behaviors. So what we most commonly use is deferred feedback. And so what that does is they don't know anything after they answer each individual question. It submits all the questions at once at the end. But we do have different options. So adaptive mode, what that's going to do is it's going to let them check the question as they go. It doesn't necessarily mean that they can try again. It's just going to tell them immediately whether they got it right or wrong. There's a setting elsewhere to determine whether or not they can try again. But in order for adaptive mode to work, you do have to have whether correct checked right here, because if they can see that, they can click the checkbox, but then it doesn't show them anything. So that is going to look a little different because each question is going to have that check at the bottom. And so they get to check and see that they got it wrong. And if you have it set up where they can attempt the questions multiple times, then they can try again. Another one of those options is immediate feedback. That's very similar. So adaptive mode, adaptive mode, they can try again, but it's going to penalize them for each time they get it incorrect. Adaptive mode with no penalties is just you want them to go until they get the right answer, and then it's going to let them just keep trying over and over again until they click the right answer. Deferred feedback is what we normally use. Deferred feedback with CBM. CBM means certainty-based marking. So what that's going to do is it's going to ask them, how confident are you in your answer on that question? And so you can kind of get an idea if they just guessed or if they're like, no, I actually know this one. Okay. Immediate feedback is just going to give them that answer immediately. It's going to, well, it doesn't necessarily give them the answer. It's just going to tell them whether they got it right or wrong immediately. If you have it set up on here that they get the specific feedback, marks, general feedback, right answer, then it will show them all of those things immediately under immediate feedback. But if you don't have those set up, it'll just tell them if the choice that they made was right or wrong. It won't show them the right answer. It'll just show them whether or not theirs was right, if that makes sense. Immediate feedback with certainty-based marking, same thing, except it's also going to ask them how confident are you. So let's look at one of those. We did deferred with certainty-based. And so you go choose your answer and then you're like, unsure, kind of sure, or really sure. Right. So I'm pretty sure on that one. And so you just do that with every single one. And then on this one, no, I'm totally just guessing here. I know that was not it. So I'm unsure. So that's what the competency-based marking is. Sorry, certainty-based marking. Nope, that's not what I want to do. Okay, and then interactive with multiple tries is a little bit different than adaptive because there is a thing on each question where you can set up hints. And so when they get it wrong, not only does it let them try again, but it gives them some sort of hint. And so I have hints set up on, this one. So let's see. We'll just try that. And then when I go back, it doesn't tell me my hint. And that's because, sorry, I forgot I had to do this part. I have to have that set up to show me these things. When I preview. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so now when I try random word, it should give me a hint. And so that's my hint. Be sure to check the spelling. And then if I try again, I'm going to try, the answer is mouse, but I don't want to get it right yet. Now it says you can use the singular or the plural form of the word. So I have it set up where they can use mouse or mice. And so then this last time when they check, I got it correct. So to do that on every single question type down here at the bottom, you can do multiple tries. And this is where you put those hints. And so it's going to take away 1/3 of the points each time they try again. So they're not going to get that full credit, but they can keep going. So, and the almost last thing I wanted to show you was all those review options. So these are going to determine whether or not they can see those things while they're taking the test. So these are only important during the attempt if you have something other than deferred feedback set up. If you have deferred feedback set up, did you see how I automatically grade those out? Because it doesn't matter, it's not going to show them any of that. Immediately after the attempt means as soon as they hit submit and finish, can they see whether or not they got questions correct? Can they see their grade? Can they see the specific feedback or the general feedback? Can they see the right answer, or can they see overall feedback? Specific feedback, if you look at a question, each option, A, B, C, D, you can leave feedback for that question. That's specific feedback. General feedback, you can leave feedback for that whole question. No matter what their choice is, it's going to show them this feedback. Overall feedback is for the exam as a whole, and that's found here. So, and you can base that on the grade that they got on the exam as a whole. Same thing here. They can see their information later while the quiz is still open. So, like the next day, they can see their score, or they can't see anything until the quiz is completely closed. And since we don't have anything checked right now, actually, I don't have a timing set up on this, so it won't let me check anything because the quiz never closes. But since we don't have grades set up here, when we go to the grade book, we can't see our grades as students right now. So it is important to make sure that you check these at least here. But this assumes that your quiz will eventually close. This one doesn't have any closing time, so you can't do that. Last thing I wanted to look at was how to grade some of these. So if you use short answer and essay questions, you're going to see this requires grading. Actually, those are all essay, because short answer it grades for you. You do not have to click on each of these and go through all these individual pages to grade those. That is very tedious. Instead, what you do is you go here and then you go to manual grading. And you can look at, this way you can look at all of the essay questions, or you can look at a student's whole exam. It just depends on what you want to do. So our first essay question, I've had 2 students take the exam. And so these are their 2 answers. And so, why did the chicken cross the road? He didn't. You imagined it. They include this attachment that I have to download. We get to see the chicken. That seems like the right answer. Why did the chicken cross the road? To knock on the door, walk into the bar, and change the light bulb. I mean, I'll take it, right? So then those are graded, and you can update those grades, or you can just leave them. Yeah. And this is going to show you all the ones that need to be graded. So our second essay question, what is the meaning of life? Our third essay question with the subject, verb, and direct object. And that Weirus essay question, I wouldn't even know how to begin grading this. But that's one of the things that you can also do in these essay questions. You can put the answer into the question for the grader. So it shows up here. So this is the answer. Students don't see that. You just see it when you're grading, so that in case you don't exactly remember the answer, you can have it there for you. So yeah, I think that's it on that. Now I do have a few questions that I got. Oh my gosh. I didn't get very many, but I do have a few. I'm trying to make this bigger and it's not wanting to go. Whatever, doesn't matter. Does anybody have any questions? And then I will get to the ones that people emailed me. But any questions about these quiz questions? Questions about the questions? Okay.
I do really like those closed questions. I use it a lot in my math classes too. I think I've talked to you about this before, Ashley. There's so many different ways to code that. And I've been sneaking some from Aja's classes that I'm teaching after she's taught them and stuff. So I've got a list built of different ways to code those, you know, and how do you make it do multiple choice? How do you make it do a short answer? How do you make it do this, or whatever? So I don't know if anybody wanted that. I've got it in a Word document that I keep, you know, looking back at every time I set up a closed question. So
yes, there is a tiny bit of, I mean, it's not really programming. It's just kind of setting it up correctly.
Yes.
But it is different for everyone. Like every single one, you have to have curly bracket, how many points it's worth, colon, and then a code like MC for multiple choice, MCS for multiple choice shuffled, MCV for multiple choice vertical, MCVS for so all those choices that we went through, there is a different code for each one of them. And then each one of them allows you to give just like almost an unlimited number of answers. And they all have to have little tildes in front of them.
Yes.
And then you can change the percentages for them. There's a lot you can do with those. And you can get feedback on individual ones. So yeah, there's a lot you can do.
Do you have a list of all those codes?
I don't keep one handy, but I always just Google it.
Yeah.
And it's this
I mean,
one that
that's
I look
what
at
I
a
do
lot,
if
which
I
is
want
why
to do
it's
something
purple.
different.
And it's these.
Yes, that stuff.
Because hey, that's what I've always done is just Google it if I don't know it.
Yeah. So when I forget what it's supposed to look like, I just go to those, just Google it. And so this shows you what it looks like if you want to include feedback and just all kinds of stuff. And it explains what all of that means as well. So.
And then you have sometimes where students add a different word that you didn't think of. And so you have to go back and then use that regrade all.
Yes. Yes. So that is a good point, because on the short answer, when you set up a short answer, again, you have to have a correct answer in there. And so if someone answers it correctly, but just not in a way that you had thought of, you have to, well, you don't have to, but you should go add that to your question. And then you can hit regrade. And you can do that here and select all and then regrade. And, or hit the regrade all, and it will run it again with that new answer included, so that if anybody else came up with that answer, that they'll still get the points. So yeah. Okay, so questions that I got, adding bonus questions to regular quizzes. Yes and no. There is sort of a way to do it, but it's a little bit of a workaround and it can be confusing for the students. So basically, if you would like to add a bonus question as like the final question to your test, which we've all seen happen in traditional classes, even if we, there's not really a way to do that on Moodle, except let's say you have 50 questions on your test and you want to add a 10-point bonus at the end. Obviously that's a lot, but you know, we're just doing. So what you would do is you would just add it as a normal question and then make your quiz worth 50 points, even though there's 60 points available because of your 10-point bonus question. Is that, but it's still going to show the students that they got, it's going to then divide it out of 50. So like, let's say they got 45 of the normal ones right, and then the 10-point bonus. So it's still going to divide that by 60 and then show them that they got 45.8 out of 50. So then what you have to do is go to the grade book and go to the quiz. Oh, sorry, the settings of the quiz, and change the multiplier so that the multiplicator is 1.2, which is 60 out of 50. If it was 55 out of 50, you'd change it to 1.1. If it was, you know, just depending on what the bonus is. So yes and no, it's somewhat complicated, and the students are still going to see the other grade on the quiz. So if they go back to review the quiz, they're going to see that other grade, and then they'll see the grade with the multiplier and the bonus worked in the grade book. So they'll see different grades in different places, and that might just confuse them more than help them. So that's bonus questions and quizzes. Somebody else mentioned that they do traditional pop quizzes. So basically they're saying when they're teaching, they do pop quizzes in class. And now we have some students in class and some students on Moodle. And so that can be a little bit harder to accomplish. And so basically for that, I would recommend one of two things. If you are giving a pop quiz that is like multiple choice questions that you've already come up with before class, you can just put that on Moodle and hide it until time, and then tell the students on Zoom, okay, you have a quiz, you have to be on there right now and you have to take it while the students in class are taking it. But that's not the way pop quizzes always work. Sometimes we show up to class and we're trying to teach, and about 10 minutes in, we realize nobody read anything, nobody did their homework, nobody knows what on earth we're talking about, right? No, just me and my lit classes. No. And so then we go, okay, we're going to have a pop quiz, and you kind of make up the questions on the spot. You didn't know it was going to happen. So there's no way you could have something set up on Moodle already, right? So what I would do in that situation is create an assignment on Moodle. And I actually stopped my screen share, but I will start that again, because you can create the assignment on Moodle. And when you go to the part that they are supposed to submit, I mean, this is something you can do right there when you're angry and decided to do a pop quiz, and do online text and turn off file submission. And so what happens when you do that is when they go into, then make them go into that assignment. So let's say you are creating the quiz right there in that moment, you can get, you go, okay, number one, what is this character's name? You know, and that's the kind of stuff that I make up in lit classes when they don't read. But the people online can get on Moodle and answer those and just type those directly into Moodle as everybody else is writing them on their pieces of paper. And so that is a way to do that with both of them, if that makes sense. No, am I the only one who does angry quizzes? Because nobody did their homework? Okay, well. Somebody asked about Turnitin and how Turnitin works with Moodle. How many of you guys use Turnitin, the plagiarism software? I know that it's big in the English department, but maybe not in some of the others. So I wasn't sure how relevant that would be. But on any assignment that you have, you can do your assignment the way that you've always done, and then just come down here to the Turnitin plagiarism plugin settings and enable Turnitin. And it's still going to look the same as it's always looked for you. But when you go to that page where you grade, and I don't have anything submitted, so I can't really show you very well, but that page where you're grading something and it shows their name up here and then the assignment right here, and it's like a PDF that you can write on, and then over here is where you put the grade in. Does that sound familiar? Can't see your faces, so I'm going to assume you're all like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's going to be a little link there that says Turnitin, and you can just click on that and it'll show you the originality report from the assignment, so that you can see if it's plagiarized. So, and then my last question was about group annotation, and I would use a Google document for that, because if they're logged in, you can see what changes who's making, and you can all be on there live and working on it. So that was the questions I got. Do you guys have any other questions? I think somebody might need to go check on John. I think he might have passed out over there. If he was in my class, I'd throw something at him.
I had to click on the gallery so I could see what you were talking about.
Yes, you should. You should. It's great.